What would you do if a stray cat showed up at your door every single day, and one night, it led you to a secret that changed your life forever? Most people would ignore it. Sarah almost did. At 34 years old, Sarah felt like her life had quietly fallen apart 2 years earlier. She had lost her husband in a car accident. The grief never truly left. It simply learned how to hide behind forced smiles and long workdays. She lived alone in a small apartment on the edge of town. Every morning looked the same. Wake up, go to work, come home, eat alone, sleep, repeat. The silence in her apartment felt heavier. Each day, one rainy evening, as Sarah returned from work, she noticed a small orange cat sitting outside her door. It was soaked from the rain. Its fur looked messy. One ear had a small tear. The cat stared at her with bright green eyes. Sarah sighed. Sorry, little guy. I can barely take care of myself. She unlocked the door and went inside. The next morning, the cat was still there, waiting. The day after that, still there, and the day after that. Finally, Sarah placed a small bowl of food outside. The cat devoured it. From that day forward, the orange cat became part of her routine. Every evening, it appeared. Every morning, it disappeared. No collar. No owner. No explanation. Sarah named him Lucky. Weeks passed. For the first time in years, she found herself smiling. Sometimes, she talked to Lucky, not because she expected a response, but because speaking to someone, even a cat, felt better than speaking to no one. One night, she sat on the apartment steps beside him. You know something, Lucky? She said. I think everyone leaves eventually. The cat simply blinked, then pressed its head against her hand, and somehow that tiny gesture made her cry. The next morning, Lucky didn't appear. Sarah waited. No cat. She checked outside before work. Nothing that evening. She returned home. Still nothing. Days passed. No sign of Lucky. To her surprise, she missed him deeply. The apartment felt empty again. The silence returned. 1 week later, Sarah heard scratching at her door. Her heart jumped. She opened it. Immediately, Lucky stood there. But something was different. The cat looked nervous. Restless. It meowed repeatedly, then began walking away, stopping, looking back. As if it wanted Sarah to follow. Where are you going? She asked. Lucky meowed again, then continued walking. Curious, Sarah followed. The cat led her through several streets, past a grocery store, past an old church, toward a forgotten neighborhood she had never visited. Finally, Lucky stopped in front of an abandoned house. The windows were broken. The yard was overgrown. The place looked empty. The cat squeezed through a gap in a fence. Sarah hesitated, then followed. Inside the backyard, she heard something unexpected, a faint sound, almost like crying. She froze, then heard it again. A child. Sarah rushed toward the sound. Behind a collapsed shed, she discovered a little girl. No older than 6 years old, cold, terrified, and alone. The child had wandered away from a nearby neighborhood and become trapped behind fallen debris. She had been missing for nearly a day. Sarah immediately called emergency services. Within minutes, help arrived. The girl was rescued safely. Soon, her desperate parents arrived. Tears streamed down their faces as they hugged their daughter. One police officer approached Sarah. If you hadn't found her tonight, things could have ended very differently. Sarah looked down. Lucky was sitting beside her, calmly watching. The officer smiled. Looks like your cat is the real hero. Sarah turned to pet him, but suddenly, Lucky was gone. She searched everywhere. Nothing. The cat had vanished. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. Lucky never returned. Sarah often wondered where he had gone. Maybe he belonged to someone. Maybe he had simply moved on. Life slowly improved. The little girl's family stayed in contact. Sarah became close friends with them. For the first time in years, she felt connected to people again. She volunteered at local community events. She started helping children. She laughed more, smiled more, lived more. One autumn afternoon, Sarah visited an animal shelter to donate supplies. As she walked through the building, something caught her attention. A photograph hanging on the wall. An orange cat, green eyes, tawny. Her heart stopped. It was Lucky. The shelter manager noticed her staring. You recognize him? Sarah nodded. That's Lucky. The manager looked surprised. His name wasn't Lucky. What do you mean? The manager explained. Years earlier, the cat had lived with an elderly man named Henry. Henry had volunteered at the shelter every week. He rescued abandoned animals, helped lonely people, and always said one thing. Sometimes the smallest kindness saves the biggest life. When Henry passed away, the cat disappeared. No one ever saw him again. Sarah stared at the photo. A strange feeling filled her chest. How long ago did Henry die? The manager checked a file. Almost 3 years ago. Sarah's breath caught. 3 years, the exact amount of time since her husband's death, the exact amount of time since her life began falling apart. The manager smiled. Funny thing about that cat. What? Every person who claimed to see him said the same thing. Sarah felt chills. What did they say? The manager replied softly. He always appeared when someone needed help the most. Sarah looked at the photograph, her eyes filled with tears, because suddenly she realized something. Maybe Lucky hadn't entered her life because he needed saving. Maybe he entered her life because she did. The cat hadn't just led her to a missing child. He had led her back to life, back to purpose, back to hope. That night, Sarah walked home beneath a sky filled with stars for the first time in years. She no longer felt alone. She looked up and smiled, because sometimes the people or animals we think we're rescuing are actually rescuing us, and sometimes the smallest visitor at your door arrives carrying the biggest miracle of all.